So today we have 5 stories. I have more stories related to this subject, but I'm just going to limit it to 5. And in summary, you have first one is a lady named Pingala, and this is from a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and she's in a place which is in Nepal. This is called Janakpur, and her story is there. And then there's another person. He is an angry priest, a bitter priest, and that's a second story. And each one has their own lesson to it. The next one is a Jamil. A Jamil is from Kanyapur, which is in the UP state of India. This is another ancient story. This is from a book called the Bhagavatam, a very ancient, at least 5,000 years old. Then you have, after Jamil, a little bit more recently, you have Haridas Thakur from about 500 years back, and that's in West Bengal. And then you have Bilva Mangal Thakur. He's the last story for you. So, just say a little invocation. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Katanchana Smite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavet Vismite Viparitam Shat Shri Chaitanya Namamitam. So the first story is Pingala. And Pingala, she is a prostitute by profession. And she's been doing this for quite some time. Sometimes we find ourselves in tricks of chance. We just find ourselves in very difficult situations, and they put us in situations where you have to choose from worse or more worse. It's like we don't really have much option. Sometimes we're in very hard situations based on baggage from previous lives. We carry karma from our previous lives, and sometimes it's a very hard situation. So Pingala was in such a situation. And so one night she was out there, doing her thing. I don't know, what's her pose that she has? She has her poses that she does. She's on the street corner. And she's sizing everyone up. And this is something we all do as we're walking through New York City, isn't it? We all have some judgment in our mind. We have some we have some kind of calculation about people. This person's that, this person's some judgments going on in the mind. And so she's having, this person, maybe this person looks like they could pay for me. This person could, looks like they have some money. So she's going through this kind of judgment processing, seeing each person, the next person. But actually nobody is taking interest. They're all just passing her by. And it's producing a sense of bitterness, a sense of disgust. How many of you have been to a fragrant oil shop before? So you smell one oil, you smell 2, you smell 3, then what happens? You lose your sense. Yeah. So you can't. It's all mixed up. It's all jumbled. So you need something to refresh your palate. What do they do for you at that point? Coffee. And what is the flavor of coffee? You have 6 flavors in Ayurveda. Bitter. So bitter. What does bitter do? It actually presents a sense of clarity. Like we had a class here before about the emotional components of flavors according to Ayurveda. This is a class we gave, I think last year. But each flavor has its own emotional component in balance and in excess. So bitter in balance creates clarity. And so this situation that she was coming to, this strong bitterness, it actually produced a sense of clarity. And she's like, what am I doing here? the people that I'm trying to find money from, and maybe even some pleasure from, are themselves objects of pity. How am I going to find any sort of pleasure and happiness from someone who himself is an object of pity? And she started to think in a very, this word jnana. Any of you heard of this word jnana? Knowledge. It's Sanskrit for knowledge. There's also this word sankhya. She was thinking in a very analytical way. And she started thinking, this body is actually, it's like a house. But what is this house of the body made out of? Its beams and cross beams are bones. And if you took off the beautiful magical illusion of skin, like if you remove that, everything you would see would be utterly despicable. You would not want to see any of the ingredients that are underneath the skin. Just like, this is a house full of horrible things. And this house has 9 different windows and gates. And at night, all of these things become filthy. That's why in the Indian culture, no matter how poor you are, everyone pretty much takes a shower in the morning, because they understand that bodily cleanliness is also important for psychology, for a good, healthy mind. And that the body has all these things. It does this purification by removing waste products through the different gates of the body. And so they shower in the morning just to have a also clear mindset. Just like, this is the kind of house I'm trying to find true happiness in. This is the kind of lover, a person who is himself an object of pity. This is the kind of person I'm trying to find pleasure and financial and security from. Rather, let me find that original lover that's within my heart that I have long lost. And so she sang this beautiful song. Actually, I might be able to play a little. We have Karnamrita. She made. Let's see if it will play. This is some of the Sanskrit verses. So that is the beautiful prayer of the prostitute Pingala. And she's understanding that actually what gives beauty to the body. So you have Marilyn Monroe, but the soul has left the body. Nobody wants to take that Marilyn Monroe on a date. Everyone's like, put a bag over it, cover it over. We don't want to see it. We don't want to be near it. So the soul is what gives this beauty to the body, brings the luster, it brings everything, makes everything actually appear alive. But actually the body is said to be like a puppet, like a muppet. And what brings it life is the presence of the self, the soul. And so that bitterness creates a sense of clarity in her life to go deeper into understanding the soul and its connection to the Supreme. So that's a little story there. Next one is a story that Srila Prabhupada, our teacher, talks about this angry priest. This is this word Brahmana. Have you ever heard of this word Brahmana? So Brahmana is someone who's supposed to be situated in Brahman, in God, in divinity, who dedicates his life to study, dedicates his life to sharing education, dedicates his life to worship and engaging others in ceremonies or activities that cultivate spiritual awareness. And he also gives in charity, and he receives charity. He lives. Actually, a brahmana is meant to live very simply. In the past, actually, in ancient India, the teachers, the intellectuals, they wouldn't take salaries. They would just take donations. And this way, the advisor for the political party, they could speak very strongly because they were not paid. They could actually, they were not conformed by a salary, or they could just speak with great honesty. But everyone has their issues and their problems, and so this man, he lived across the street from a prostitute, and he was seeing the customers coming in, and she's like, that lady is such a wretch. She is so disturbing, and she has this horrible profession, you know. And she is seeing him, and she's like, oh, that priest, he's so wonderful. His heart is always on divinity. He's such a wonderful priest. I feel so bad that I'm fortunate that I live right here. But and she was always thinking, oh, how nice. I wish life worked out for me, that I was born in that situation so I could grow up and dedicate my life towards spiritual life. But life has just thrown me this trick of chance. And she was thinking in this way. And so some calamity hit the town, and they both died. And the messengers of death came. And there were two different groups of messengers. There were one group to take those who actually had no more karma. They're called the Vishnu Dutas. They took the prostitute. They said, oh, you're going to the spiritual world. Because her consciousness, what was her mind? She was always thinking, yeah, how wonderful, how godly he is. And then he was like, no, you have the wrong person. And then yes. So he had to suffer karmic reaction. He had to take birth again, and he had to go through. He wasn't liberated. Although he was supposed to be Brahmana, situated in Brahman. He was, his meditation, his consciousness was on this lower level. Any of you have read some of the Bhagavad Gita? A little bit? So this is main spiritual texts of ancient India. And there's this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam chajate ante kalevaram. Ante means end. At the end of this body, whatever consciousness you have cultivated, you're going to get a situation to match that. If you have godly consciousness, you can go return back to God. If you have material consciousness, remain in this material world. And so we find this is the example of the bitter Brahmin priest. Yeah? Got another one here. Next one is Ajamil. So this is from a very ancient book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam, it's very deep. It's such a profound spiritual text. Not only does it describe the self, the soul, consciousness, time, but there are also many things that are even materially relevant. Like if you look at what was the knowledge of astronomy 300 years ago, how far is Earth from Jupiter? You'll find that they have very short distance. You know? Maybe like, you know, they say this is our distance here. Now, if you go back 500 years ago, it's even shorter. You go 1,500 years ago, it's even shorter. You go back 2,000 years ago, that the understanding of astronomy, how far is Earth from Jupiter, even shorter. But if you go back to this 5,000-year-old text, it has some measurements that we understand today. This Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the Bhagavatam, it describes how there are different levels of planetary systems in the universe, or different places of birth in this world. Just like there are different places of birth in New York City. There's different parts of New York, different apartments and different styles of living that you could take birth in that have different levels of comfort. And all of this is done according to kama and karma. In English, you would say desire and deeds. Like if I want to fly to Chicago, depending on my credit limit, it could be Spirit Airlines. Or depending on my credit limit, it could be private jet. Just depends. So there's my desire, and then there's the deed, the karmic reaction, the result of my previous deeds, that my spending power. Just like Mozart, he was at 4 years old. He was composing symphonies. He would hear like dual symphonies in his head. He said, "I'm just a secretary. I can't even write all this stuff down." Or Ravi Shankar, the great sitarist, our teacher Srila Prabhupada, explains that he's been doing this for 7 lifetimes. He's been playing sitar, and he became the world's best sitar player. And so you have desire and deeds. And so in this ancient book, it's a story about a king. Story within a story within a story within a story. But the grand story is a king that has 7 days to live, and he wants to know what's the essence of life. What are the main lessons that what are the things that he should focus on? What should he absorb himself? Because what you absorb yourself at the time of death decides your next destination. And what you absorb yourself at the time of death will naturally be your life. I had a friend, a teacher, who he drowned and he survived. When he was a young man, he drowned, but he survived. And he said his life flashed before his eyes. And what did he say? He said, I tried to think about God. He was going to like a Catholic boarding school to become a priest, but his life wasn't very priestly. Actually, he said, all I could think about was drugs and girls, because that's what my life was about. And he said that experience gave me some type of intuitive sense that this kind of culmination, this cultivation was going to decide where I go in my next situation. It's kind of like you go to a grocery store, you put everything in the basket, but then comes the cash register. There's the payment, the result of it. And he said, I didn't think it was a good result. And so he completely changed his life. And he became a very serious, and he was one of my spiritual teachers. He's still alive now, but so it's this cultivation is there. So in this book, the Bhagavatam, there is descriptions of how people, their karmic retribution for murdering, for killing, all these horrible things. And this king, he was thinking about the people in New York City in 2025. He was thinking about the future, how everyone is a little lazy towards, maybe very busy for like material things, but little lazy towards their kind of spiritual growth, and perhaps a little neglectful towards protection of others. I mean, he said there were not really any protection for animals. They're killed. There's all kinds of things that go on. There's karmic reaction. So the king was feeling, how are people going to not be burdened by all this karma? Because there's not really spiritual life to offset the karma. It's understood that he was seeing that the future people would become more and more apathetic towards their spiritual progress, quite lazy when it comes to spiritual life. And so he had this worry. And at this point, the teacher decided, okay, I'm going to test my student. And how do you test the student? You don't just ask the student just to repeat something. You want to see, have they digested it? And so the teacher, he gave a wrong answer. He said, a person can just do some kind of religious atonement. You know, you do something bad, then you do something religious to counteract the bad. And the king said, no, that's like when an elephant goes and takes a bath. He's got his own nice hose, but what does the elephant do as soon as he gets out of the bath? Shakes off the water and? Nobody's watching National Geographic.
You can look it up on YouTube. It's very, very interesting.
Roll around in the dirt, or throw mud all over themselves, or throw dust all. So as soon as they're done with their bath, they just get covered again, right again. I guess I'm sure there's a reason for it, but
it's to hold in the moisture.
Hold in the moisture. It's like Africa. It's like very. So. Prevent some bugs and insects. But in a general sense, we say you take a bath to get clean and then you throw dirt all over yourselves. And so he's saying you do some religious thing to go back doing the same thing. You do some religious thing on Sunday, and then Monday through Saturday, you're back to your same things, He said, what's the point of that? What's the point of all that? What can really help people? Not just some ritual or something like that. And he begins to tell the story of Ajamil. And Ajamil was a young man. He was born in a very religious family. He was born in a family of priests, and he grew up studying and teaching and serving his teacher. But one day he was out gathering wood before the religious fire yagya, the fire ceremony that they perform every day, and he saw this prostitute out in the forest with this drunkard, and something struck his heart when he saw that. Now later on he got married, he had a nice family, but then he started visiting that prostitute. First he just went there and visited, and she gave him something to eat, but eventually he became her customer. And to pay to be her customer, he became gangsta. So he started robbing people, started performing all kinds of very horrible things to pay for his relationship with this lady. And this went on throughout his entire life. So he left his wife, he left the family behind, and just was this addicted person where he was just performing all this crime he would rob people in the same forest that he was gathering wood to serve the teacher to perform the fire ceremonies. He was going to the forest and robbing people in the forest who were just like traveling, killing people, all horrible crimes. And she ended up having some of his children. But still, the relationship was a financially based relationship. He had to keep on paying money with this lady, And so, one day he's getting old, and he actually has a brush with death. He's dying. And you remember, how many of you ever seen the movie Ghosts with Whoopi Goldberg? Yes. Have you seen it? It's your homework.
I saw the musical.
I saw the musical. Okay. So you saw there's like, when the person is not good, the shadow creatures come. Like, okay, we're the ones that escort you. And the person who's lived a wholesome life, the beings of light, come to escort. And so he started to see these fearsome creatures. We have some friends who work as hospice chaplains. And it's a universally common thing that those who work in hospice say, people say they see, many people say that they do see fearsome things sometimes at the time of death. And so he was seeing, and their descriptions are just like the near-death descriptions. They're always quite, there's some similar themes there. So similarly, these death agents are seen in a very similar manner. And he sees these frightening things, and so he begins to scream and cry and call out for his son. He's screaming and crying, calling out for his son. And his son's name is Narayan. Nara means human. Ayan means the shelter. The shelter of humanity. This is a name for God. But just because of his religious, childhood upbringing, he just named his son that, his youngest son. Now, in the lesson, what happens is two very powerful beings appeared. And they said, "Stop, halt, you cannot take this man." And their voices, it was like each atom was echoing that powerful voice. They said, "This man is actually free from karma." So what happened was that although he was just calling his son's name, the spiritual name of God, it's like we were chanting Hare Krishna mantra, the name of God is so powerful that if you call it with this kind of helpless mood, it will bring about a spiritual revelation. And so that calling actually helped him remember the original Narayan. And he was actually calling with sincerity. And that call, it wasn't just something where it reduced or removed the karma from the past activities. Just like we said, the elephant takes its bath. What's the point if he jumps in the mud again? It actually did something much deeper than that. It changed his heart. It really changed his heart. He was a changed person from within. He was like, I don't want to be just gratifying the temporary pleasures of the self, of the body, at the expense of the world. I want to satisfy the soul by gratifying the senses of God. I want to connect myself with divinity. And so his heart was transformed. And he left for a place called Haridwar. Has anybody heard of this, Haridwar? Yeah, Haridwar. So Hari is named for God, and Dwar means door. It means it's a very sacred spiritual place, doorway to God. And so he went there, and he sat in meditation, and he would say, Om Namo Narayanaya. He would say the same name that he called originally, just his son. And as he matured in his meditation, the same two figures appeared and brought him back to the spiritual realm. Story of Ajamil. So they're all except for the first story, they're all stories of priests and prostitutes. This is the story of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was born in Bangladesh. This is not 5,000 years ago. This is just 500 years ago, which in the Vedic culture is quite recent. And he was born in a Muslim family. He was not born in the kind of Hindu or Vedic tradition. But he became very, very serious about this process of mantra meditation. There are many, many stories about Haridas Thakur. There was an attempted murder of Haridas Thakur. There was a town where he was engaged in singing and chanting, and the priest of the town, the Hindu priest of the town, were a little bit upset. They're thinking, we do our ceremonies to get paid. But he's teaching that you just need to connect to God by calling his name with love and devotion. So he's interrupting and interfering with our kind of religious profiteering. And so they complained to the king. Now the king, this is the time when India was ruled by the Mughals, the Islamic it was under Islamic control. So they complained to the Qazi, and the Qazis, and they said, look, he's a Muslim. He shouldn't be following, shouldn't have left your tradition. You should punish him. And they said it decided to do a very harsh lesson. They said, we're going to kill him, and we're going to beat him in a marketplace. And if he survives that one marketplace, we'll take him to another marketplace. And if he survives that one, we'll beat him again in another place. And if he survives that, nobody survives after 3. 21 marketplaces later, the king's guards who are trying to kill him by physical assault, they start crying, not because of the softness of their own hearts, but because worrying of their own position. Like, if you don't die, we're going to get imprisoned. And he said, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cause you any trouble. You need me to die? Okay, I will die. And then he died. Heart stopped, body went cold. They threw him in the river. 5 miles later, he walked out of the river and went to see the king. And this is why you have teachers in India that say Jesus didn't die on the cross because you can't kill him. He's actually protected. The rising of the dead means he actually couldn't be killed. He was actually always under divine spiritual protection. So Haridas Thakur, similarly. So he was in a place called a forest called Benapole. This is in Bangladesh. And he'd become very well known as a very amazing saint. And there was a landholder there, a zamindar, someone who is like owns a large plot of land, a very wealthy person. And this person was quite jealous of Haridas Thakur, all the fame, all the prestige. Now, he lived very simply. He didn't actually. What he had taken a vow to do 10 million names of God chanting in a month. So, has anybody, we have Sri Prahlad, can you show us your japa mala? I have a japa bracelet I invented. That's the full japa mala, 108 beads. If you go around and chant one Hare Krishna mantra on each bead, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. That's one mantra, that's 16 names. If you chant one round, that's one round times 16 names. He wanted to do 10 million in a month. So if you chant 2 hours every day, you can go around 16 times. You can about 16 rounds, maybe even an hour and a half, possibly. He decided, I'm going to chant 192 rounds a day. And so about 18 hours he was engaged in meditation in a cave. And a few hours he was some food, 18 to 22 hours he was just engaged in meditation. And for this he was highly respected. Even despite he didn't have like the kind of Hindu background, and it was quite kind of caste consciousness back then. And so this man, he decided, Ramachandra Khan, he decided, okay, I'm going to ruin his reputation. And so he went to find a very beautiful, highly paid courtesan. This is like the aristocratic prostitutes. He said, I'm going to pay you, 10 times what anyone would ever pay, but you must ruin this man's reputation. And so he sent this lady to the cave. There she is. And he said, you go there and we'll go there with the police constable. He said, no. First night she left again. But the third night she came, she was completely transformed. Now, you're just hearing me chanting, but this is the chanting of a very deep, saintly person. And we find just the Ajamil, his chanting was so powerful, it changed his whole life. Haridas Thakur's chanting was so powerful, it changed her life. And she bowed before him. She said, I'm really, really sorry. I came here with very bad intentions. And, this person had paid me, and actually I don't want any, I don't want to, I want to dedicate my life. I don't want anything to do with anything anymore. I'm completely want to change my life. Everything away in charity. Especially to the saintly people. Give everything away in charity. And then you come and live in this cave and just meditate. And so she shaved her head, and she went back to the cave, and and he left the cave. And so he became very famous for turning the highly paid courtesan into now monk-like saintly person in a cave, sitting like, people were like totally convinced now. Okay, this guy is the real deal, Haridas Thakur. And I have one more story. This is Bilva Mangal Thakur. There's a backstory. I won't go into his backstory, but there's Bilva Mangal Thakur. You'll find his poetry through. I forgot it either. You'll find his poetry in many of the ancient literatures. We have a book called the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and you have a lot of his poetry. He's from about 800 years back, maybe. Is sometime before 500 years back, about 800 years back. Like I'll say one of his poems. Madhuram madhuram vapur asya vibho madhuram madhuram vadanam madhuram madhugani madhu smita metadaho madhuram 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 madhuram. So the translation is, sweet, sweet is my sweet Lord's form. Sweeter still is his face so fair. But his honey-scented, gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. This is Madhuram, Madhuram, Madhu. Anybody guess what Madhu means?
Honey.
Honey sweets, yes. Yeah. So Bilva Mangal Thakur, he was born a priest, but he had this addiction also. He became like addicted to seeing prostitutes. And he was at his father's funeral during a torrential storm. And all he was thinking is, when is this damn thing going to be over? So he can see his lady, And there's a terrible, terrible storm. And the bridge has gone out. He crosses the river during the storm on his own. He grabs onto what he thinks is a log. It's actually a cremated body that was floating down the river. He climbs over. When he gets to the lady's house, there's a gate. There's a palace gate around this courtesan's house. He climbs over the gate. He grabs onto a snake to even try to use it as a rope to get over. And then he jumps over and finally sees her. He's like completely all disheveled, and he's like, and she said to him, that you have so much energy dedicated to just try to derive some temporary pleasure. But if you had this attention, this focus towards yourself and your connection with the Supreme, you would be a great sadhu, a very wonderful saint. But you're unfortunately dedicating this attention in this way. And her words were so spoken with such clarity. Like we said, that bitter, but also like a knife. It cut away the illusion at his heart. Actually, he quotes her as one of his gurus. In the 5 stories that we've told, two of the prostitutes are quoted as gurus. The first one is Pingala, the one that was bitter, the one that was there was somebody who observed all this, and he said, she taught me this lesson, and he took her life as like she's a guru. Just that lesson I learned from her life, and this words that the lady told him was like a guru to him. It completely, totally transformed his life, and so he changed his. It didn't just change, oh, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do that. It completely transformed his heart. And that's what Bhakti is about, is actually a transformation of the heart. Not just as we see the externals. We want to see, the priest has the externals. They're engaged in religious activities, etc. But we want to see the internal, the transformation of the heart. Actually, I can tell you a 2-minute story. Just for, how many of you have heard about the caste system? Caste system, everybody heard of the caste system? So caste system is this idea that you are accepted to be part of a particular social status based on your birth. Someone's born a priest, or someone's born in a royal family, or someone's born in a business family, and they're given the honor and respect of that particular kind of social status. And so one way we deal with that in the West is to say, oh, there's no such thing. There's no classes. Everybody in school, everyone has to study algebra. Everybody has to study the same thing. But it also ignores the fact that people do have inclinations. You have people, like I have a friend who studied psychology. He said, but until I worked on a tractor, I was never happy. It's like, he started working on a tractor, and it's all of a sudden he was like, this is my thing. Like, he could get a degree, but this thing was what satisfied him. And so in every part of the society, in every part of the world, you'll find intellectuals, you'll find leaders, you'll find those who organize and make businesses, and those who work for people, who seek employment. These are kind of, you find these social, or these kind of occupational archetypes there in every place. But they're not decided by birth. They're by your guna, your qualities, and your karma, your actions, as stated in the Gita. So there was one story of a young boy, and he wanted to go to school to become a priest. And the teacher said, "Oh, what's your family? Just like you apply for school, you have to give your family. You got to give it some information." And he said, "Oh, I don't know. Let me go back home." And he asked his mom. Mom, his name is Satyakama, famous author of the Jabala Upanishad. He said, "Who's my dad?" And she said, I don't know. You can use my name as your last name. And he went back to his teacher, said, my mother is a prostitute, and she doesn't know who my dad is. And he said, you're a priest because you have the quality of honesty. That's what matters. It's not the family thing. It's the actual quality that's there. Therefore, because you have the quality, then let's cultivate that. If someone sees a building on fire and their intention is to run in there and save people, then that person has the quality of the protector. Let's cultivate that. If someone, like I know my friend's kid's like 7 years old, he's always trying to sell things to people. It's like, let's cultivate that. Like, guy's got a business mood. But so ancient story, kind of going against the whole caste idea, that it's all about the qualities. So those are just overview of different stories, but each one is meant to carry a particular theme. You had the story of Pingala, which is kind of getting tired with things, material things, and driving us to really reach out to something. Story different. Of the bitter Brahmin. We're understanding it's all about our consciousness. It's not just the externals. Like he was a priest, but the prostitute, she was the one that got liberated because her consciousness was in the right state. About Ajamil, where what are the things that actually can powerfully transform consciousness? One thing is this sound vibration, mantra, because it goes right into the heart. You're getting direct connection to the Supreme. It's like what happens when you put metal into fire. The metal also becomes fire. It becomes hot and luminous. It's basically fire now. So if we put our consciousness in connection to divinity, it becomes also spiritualized. And then you have the story of Haridas Thakur, how this transformation can help also transform those who are around us, and Bilva Mangal Thakur, where we want to take in this spiritual information in such a way that it can cut away things that hold us back and help us grow. So we'll stop here and see what are your takeaways? What will you take home tonight? What are your reflections? Yes.
My reflection is that, let's say, you don't have to experience that some people go to church and they share that information with people. I pray on a daily basis. I pray on a daily basis, but do I have to press on something?
No.
But then, the more I interact with the person who prays a lot, I've noticed that the person is very judgmental of other people. You know, like, oh, this person is this and that woman is that. And I'm like, oh my God, and you're supposed to be like, you know, you pray and you go into church. So my point is, even if the prostitute, right, and everybody, like, and the priest was judging her himself, and he's supposed to be a holy person, but then it's our thoughts that might even change our karma.
Exactly, yeah. What you count increases.
This is what I learned today. Like, for instance, not to judge other people as much, just mind your own business, concentrate on yourself, because like sometimes I'm a human being and I tend to be also a little bit judgmental. I'm not saying nobody's perfect, but now I'm learning my lesson just to, you know, if the thought will come to my mind about someone, I have to remind myself that I might take their karma on myself. And then
That's true, yeah.
And that happened to me too in this life. Let's say I've noticed if I'll talk negative about somebody, like, oh, this person's done something, how come that person done it? And then the same situation happened to me, or might even something even worse that I went through. And I was like, oh my God, I attracted it myself with my thoughts and with my judgment about that other person. I'm telling you the truth from my own personal experience.
Thank you. Yes, it says whatever you count increases. Like, so if you start counting your money and keeping track of it, your money will increase if you just keep track of it. If you start counting the faults in others, then those faults will increase within yourself. If you count the good qualities in others, then those good qualities will increase in yourself. You count your own blessings, those blessings will increase. And so, definitely. Yes?
Yeah, one thing I want to take back is that bitterness gives clarity.
Bitterness gives clarity.
That's a really great thought, because typically when we feel bitter, we try to push it away. But instead, if we dwell in it, maybe that is what we need to get the spiritual insight we've been looking for.
Oh. It's like the old movies where they give you like a slap. So let life like kind of wake us out of a dream.
Is this true for any kind of negative emotion? Like, for example, if you have sadness, is sadness also a window to clarity? Or
yes, can be.
It's only bitterness.
So, like, if you looked at the when we did the Ayurveda, the emotions of flavors, each of them have their balance and an excess. So, sweet is a sense of satisfaction. Like, why end a meal with a sweet? Because then you're done. You're satisfied. If you end a meal with a jalapeno, then you're like, I want more. It's like, but the sweet is satisfied. But too much sweet is a sense of just like complacency. Sour is a very sharp, cutting taste. And so sour gives a sense of like discernment. Like, we don't want to like have no intelligence, no discernment. But then too much sour is just critical, just like a sour attitude. There's a saying of the sour grapes, where the fox is trying to jump to catch these grapes, but because he can't do it, he says they're sour. So it's like a critical. There's pungent, is spicy, is like it's like some eagerness, some excitement. But too much spice is hot-headed, pissed off, you know. Salt increases all flavors. Salt makes things more sweet, more sour, more spicy. So salt is like some vigor. And too much salt is like someone who's overly indulgent, and they kind of lose their sense. And so they have different emotional components. There's also, there's bitter, there's astringent, there's other flavors as well.
I had one quick question. So, what is the moral? What is the morality of prostitution as per the Vedic thought?
So in the Bhagavatam, you have when Krishna is visiting Dwarka, it's described. Yeah, there even in such a city, there are courtesans there. So material world is meant to be a place where people are. It's not a perfection world. It's a world like a hospital. Everyone's a bit conditioned. Now, I think in the courtesans part, it's not like people who got kidnapped or like human trafficking or some weird thing like that, but somebody who I don't know what the historical background, like how they got in that situation, but instead of trying to corrupt somebody who is married and getting in some affair, okay, you just go to this person, you know. If you don't try to sleep around with the regular people, if you're a male or female, you go to the that person. You don't kind of try to corrupt stable relationships, you know. Definitely not good for. It's not the best situation, and that's what Pingala was like. I'm done with this. And with Pingala, she felt like, okay, like even though life was troubling, she developed this trust that if I, like the lady who moved into the cave, if I just do give myself to divinity, divinity will take care of me. I don't need to. It's not necessary. But that came with a particular type of maturity and qualification.
So there's a big difference between let's say the Western morality of monogamy versus what we hear in Vedic thought. So what is the reason for that?
Tell me
difference?
more. What's
like,
what?
I think if you look at Christian thought, you're supposed to be monogamous, right? You're supposed to be sparing in.
And if you're not satisfied with one, then you won't be able to have a stable relationship. And so if you have kind of a Baskin-Robbins sample here, sample there, sample here, sample there, that will ruin your chance of a healthy, stable relationship, because then you won't be satisfied in either situation. Like Prabhupada tells a story, this leper, he's so sick, but his wife is like a saint. She's so compassionate, and this guy is like so messed up, and so his dying wish is to go see a prostitute, and she tries to help him, unfortunately. And then the lady, she even feels bad, and so she's hosting him at the house, and she feeds him, and everything she gives him in a gold pot and an iron pot. And then he says, "Why are you giving me same food in different pots?" She says, "Oh, taste the difference." He said, "I don't taste any different." He said, "See, what's the point? Why do you have your wife at home? Why do you need I'm some expensive prostitute? Why do you desire some other relation, another? It's all the same. It's just in a different dress, you know." Okay. Yes.
It's also related to a modern society, like online dating apps, right? That people nowadays, they just swipe with a finger and then decide. You know, they go and they try to date a little bit with this person, and then relationship didn't work out, we're moving on to the next, it doesn't work out, and it goes like a chain reaction. So
Yes.
in the modern society, do we still stand a chance to find the relationship and be faithful to one person?
Our general statistics don't show that we're doing so well. So we should probably learn from those who are doing well. Like someone told me, ask marriage advice from somebody who's happily married. You know, don't get relationship advice from people who are not in healthy relationships. You know, that's been one way. You know, and so ancient cultures may provide us good knowledge. If we find the cultures where the relationships are strong and healthy, and every culture there's things that need to be learned. Like India could learn a lot about Japanese bathrooms, how they're spick and span. You know, every culture has something to learn from some other culture. You know, but we should see, what can I learn? What can I learn from another? If somebody else is doing this in a very successful way, how can I learn from them? All right. I think we're all ready for our dinner. Any last comments, questions, or? All right. Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Hare Krishna.